Hey there. Welcome to History Chats this afternoon. Yeah, so today we're culminating a month-long series that we did here. Um, myself a little bit. We've been looking around some of the places in Marathon County and some places that you should know, which has been the theme for this month. It's a theme we've done before, probably come back to, but we've hit some cool, stuff this week or over the past few weeks. And today we're going to kind of bring us to a conclusion here, at least before we move on to something else, by talking about where are we? Let's take a look at some slides, some pictures from the past from our archives, and try to figure out, hey, where are we based off of, context clues and various things. It should be kind of a fun concept. Hope you enjoy. But in order to get into this, I need to just bear with me for a second here. Yeah. So let's see this a little bit better here. Yeah, we're going old school for this, sort of. I thought it'd be fun not just to show you some scanned pictures that I've taken, slides like this, which are very, very cool. You can project them, and they're also super popular for documenting, photo collections and things like that. But I thought it'd be fun to do it as they would have done it back when these were very popular, starting in the 1960s. To go with a slide carousel format here. So put a bunch of slides on the carousel. I'm going to put it to the projector here. Probably could have made my life a little easier and used a smaller carousel. They came in 80 slots or 140. And for whatever reason, I picked 140, but it'll work. So let's embark on this journey here. Let's take a look at some slides and try and figure out where we are. Okay, so I know that you can't see this very well. I wouldn't say it's by design. It's not really by design. It's just a nature of if I have the web camera so you can kind of see me and get the ambiance, you won't be able to actually see the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and, after I record this, scan all of them and then superimpose it right there. Oh, sorry. I know you can't see this, but this is a little out of focus. There we go. So I'll try not to point on this because you won't be able to, you'll lose it. But starting with, well, I thought this would be a fun one to start with. Now these slides, by the way, all come from the Marathon County Historical Society's collection. And they are all, I wouldn't say unidentified. They all have, most of them have some identification, but they're not. Like this one, for example, is just simply entitled Spring Cleanup Kickoff, 1966. So that's cool, that's helpful, but it doesn't tell us where this is happening. So I thought this would be a good one to get started with. What context clues can we look at to try and determine where this is? Well, I will say the first thing that jumps to my mind is the bus in the background, but I did a whole program on public transportation in the Marathon County area about a year ago. So that's the thing that jumps out. But I can confirm that that is a Wausau City bus. Before the Wausau bought it, but it was the Wausau Transit Lines. And its owner was down in Chicago, or, from Chicago, where he brought up that color scheme of the yellow and green. So we know it's there. We know, if we're not dating the photograph, but that would also be a kind of telltale sign that this is not. This is in the 60s, right? Because he took over in the 50s, and then in the 70s it became the city municipal service. Watts is what they named it to not long after that. But that's all not the point, right? We're not looking to find the date because it's written on the slide. So what can we use to determine where we are? Well, the fact that it's the Wausau City bus does help because it means that it's in Wausau, right? We can be sure that this is not in, I I don't know, Mosinee, it's not in Merrill, it's not in Medford, non-M city names. It's in Wausau, right? Okay, point two that you can look at here, and there's a lot of ways you could do this, but I also noticed the brick road, which is a bit of a giveaway too. There's not a lot of brick based roads in Marathon County, or even Wausau. It's really just kind of that immediate downtown area. So we know we're in the vicinity. Now, of course, if you are familiar with this area, you might have immediately locked on to some of the signs and the companies there, or the buildings, I guess. But there's a couple here. There's Kresge's. That's the orange sign on the wall to the left. There's the Ben Franklin, or the Franklin Savings and Loan across the bus, across the intersection there. And then there's Wisconsin Public Service. There's Home Loans. There's a few companies. Now, if you're familiar with Kresge's, it's kind of a giveaway. Kresge's is on the 400 block, what we colloquially call the 400 block, between 3rd and 4th Streets, where there was this, originally that was the courthouse square, and then it became department stores. That's this era. And then later on, they were torn down, and we have the lovely park there, the green space, the stage, and all of that. So we're looking, around that block, and because of the Franklin Savings and Loan, we know that was means that is the corner of 3rd and Jefferson. So we're looking on Jefferson towards 3rd Street. Right? 3rd Street? Yeah. You get the idea, right? There's a lot of ways that you can go about figuring out where you are if there are helpful context clues. Now, sometimes there's less of those. This is another good example. So this is a picture taken, it's not labeled, but most of the slides that I'm using were stamped. So when you got the film developed and then you took it to make them into slides, either you did it or you took it into service, they might stamp, here's when the slide was created, so you can have a date there. Sometimes they don't then write the information. And this is one of those cases where they just wrote the name of the company, which is Gallery of Sound. This is not a picture that we can use context clues on, right? We either recognize where this is, the building, or you don't. But one of the benefits is it's very clearly labeled Gallery of Sound. Because this is 1968, 69, 68, 69, somewhere in there, right? I can use one of these. This is a city directory. You could use phone books. You could use newspaper records. There's a lot of ways that you could do this, right? But because this is a directory, this is from 1969, and I'm able to look up, and I found Gallery of Sound. And I know that it was located on 205 Jackson Street. Did a little bit more digging, just some fun history of the company. So as you can see, they are advertising televisions and radios as kind of their main thing. Radios, televisions, record players, that sort of stuff. They were kind of the main distributors of RCA color televisions back in the day. At this point, it's actually owned by a guy named William Bush, but it had been started about 2 or 3 years before by Barbara Isaacson, who was a local artist and community figure. And the name Gallery of Sound is kind of a hodgepodge because they did sell radios and televisions and record players, but she also was a well-known and respected artist and organizer. And so she used this opportunity to have a room where she might have, some art displays, like a gallery. I don't think William Bush continued that trend. Now, it was located here on Jackson Street until 1970, so about 2 years, year or two after this. It gets moved to Grand Avenue at 928. So, directories, I'm going to be using those quite extensively. Here's my remote here. This is from the same series. I'm not going to do too many of these, but there's a couple here from 1969. They were all taken and stamped at the same time. This one is again, might be familiar with you. There's a little bit more context clues, but you might not need it if you ever, attended this place in the 1970s, is kind of when they were active. Again, this is from 1968, 69, in which this was just established. This is Burger Chef. Established in 1968. And then it ran until, under that name until about 1982, until it became Hardee's. Now, where are we is an interesting question. Again, there's some more context clues here. You can see the road. There's not too many four-lane roads in the Wausau area in the 1960s. There's also some trees there, but that's not super helpful. You know, it's not very distinct, especially as things have changed, but, you know, it could be helpful in some cases. So again, using the directory and other sources, I was able to verify where this was. This is at 1700 Grand Avenue. So it's on Grand Avenue, four-lane highway makes sense. Essentially, we're looking from the perspective across the street from Pine Grove Cemetery, and actually the Hebrew Cemetery is where those trees are. So it's just kind of in that corner as you go south on Grand Avenue. But yeah, Burger Chef, another, again, before my time, but certainly something that I'm sure many people, maybe even you, you know, if you were cruising Grand Avenue back in the day, you might have stopped for a burger. Speaking of a food joint in a different sort of fashion, this is another one that I was not familiar. It's before my time, but I'm sure you know, many of you will know well Ray's Red Owl. Again, this is from 1968-69. This picture. It opened in 1968 here. This location. It was a collaboration between the manager and owner. The Ray in this context is Ray Oster, who actually had a Red Owl down in Stevens Point, and I think he moved up. I don't know if he continued to operate the chain down in Point. I didn't think to look into that, but he had some help from a organizer, co-owner Harold Lindell initially at opening it up here, which is in Schofield. That was actually 5401 South Highway 51. Which at the time, you know, this is Business 51 today, back before the bypass went in and Highway 51 went, or the main 51 went on the west side in the freeway. This is essentially at the intersection of Highway 29 and Highway 51. So that's where that's located. Now, a couple years later, the success of this location will lead Ray to open up another Ray's Red Owl, which other people might be familiar with. This is in Wausau. That was located at 1405 6th Street. Which is today the Family Dollar, but many people maybe remember it in the last few decades as the Family Video Store. Now later on, Ray leaves and there's a Hal that takes over, the Hal's Red Owl, or Hal's Food Store, but so again, certainly one of those that's been around for quite some time. And a fun thing to try to figure out if you don't immediately know where this is. This is a little harder. Amber Electric. So this one was interesting because I pulled out the city directory and I flipped through and I could not find it at all. It's not under the alphabetical section or under Amber. It is not under the electric yellow pages business listings. So I was like, huh. Well, I mean, it's a truck. It's not like the business, you know, this could be the headquarters of the business, but it might also not be. So what's going on here? Is this from out of town? Is this a company from outside of the Wausau area that's maybe doing a house call? And I thought about that for a second, and then I was like, yeah, it's probably not the case because it's in a series of Wausau businesses. I did a little digging, and I, in the newspaper record, found that they were very active, Amber Electric, during the late 60s, early 70s, 70, 71, I suppose, not too long after that, in the industrial, you know, amateur sports, bowling, softball. I'm not sure which one specifically. I didn't think to check that, but I just saw their name pop up in the records. But through that, I was able to determine that indeed they were. So this was established in 1967 by Jim Erickson, who moved to town. Now he had a couple years earlier already been here and established a company called Add a Room Incorporated, which was like a room remodeling, you know, house contracting sort of dealie. Started the electric company, which functioned for a while. In 1971, he also acquired the bar on 3rd Avenue called For the Good Times, and that one became his sort of main interest, business interest for the time being. Into the 1970s, the other stuff kind of falls away. I think there was also some unpleasantness with some like a financial partner or something. It's not important really. But through that, I was able to verify that this is almost certainly, if this is the headquarters of the businesses, this would be at 1608 Stark Street. That's kind of cool. This one falls into what I initially thought the other one was going to be, though, because this is labeled Green Bay Packaging Truck, which is what that is. However, this is clearly not at the plants, right? This is not at the mayor house or the offices. This is just them going down a street. And I thought, oh, this would be a good one. I was going through the stack of slides, and I was like, oh, cool. Set that one aside. There's the bridge. I'm not immediately familiar knowing where we are. It's a good sign, but I think there's enough here that I could figure it out. And then I continued to go through before I got a chance to go and actually do the diligence. I came across this one about 2 slides later. Same place. You know what this one was labeled? Bridge Street. West Side Central Bridge Street. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So this is the railroad crossing and where it used to be. This is the railroad that crosses today kind of near, the Walgreens and CVA kind of there off of West Bridge Street. But there used to be, going over. The area's changed a little bit. Again, some of you will remember this a little before my time. But this is another example of how this can happen, right? Sometimes when you're going through slides, it may not have all the information you need, but that might be just because they've already labeled Bridge Street here, and then they established where we are, and then the next slide was, the trucking, right? But still probably here to highlight the truck and the green bed packaging. I'm assuming. I actually don't really know. I don't really know what the intention for this particular slide was. At most of these slides, there's some ambiguity there. And it's probably a good segue to talk about this. So this is the Wausau Chamber of Commerce building. The Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce, sorry. Around 1960, they decided to move out of their headquarters that had served them for about 20 years. That was in the Mayor Lutz building in downtown Wausau. And the Wausau Chamber of Commerce adopts a new name, a new sort of deal. They put up this sign. This is in 1965. Yeah. Or at least probably 1964. They were putting up the sign. It's stamped 1965, so it's probably produced. But they probably took this picture in late 1964 or early 65. Either way, put the sign up. And they are the Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce, right? I think this is really interesting. Why am I showing this? Well, a couple things. One, where are we, right? Do you know this building? This is not the one that people probably remember. In the 1970s, they're going to move into the very early 70s into a new building on 4th and Scott Streets, which would be their home for a while after that. But 4th and Scott Street, that's a very different building. This is where they were in the 1960s. And so, again, there's probably not a lot of context here. Thankfully, you don't need it. All of the slides that I'm going to show you today are stamped very explicitly, Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce. And then they give the address, which happens to be 329 4th Street. So that's where they are. I like this for a couple of reasons. I'm going to try to sprinkle in the narrative, the meta narrative of what we're actually talking about besides just where are we, because it's never. Look, I tried to put a program together about where are we, genuinely asking that question, and it just kept coming back to, but why are we? Why are they taking these pictures? And the answer comes to these are all from the Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce, and there's a very good reason why they're taking the picture. For some context, I went through some of the annual reports and the publications here. So, for example, in 1960, they're talking about the new building that they're going to be building. They adopt the name Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce not long after that to reflect the fact that this is an organization that represents not just Wausau, but a broad spectrum of businesses across, Schofield, Rothschild, Weston, Stettin, Rib Mountain. It's the Wausau area in a larger sense. By 1965, this is 64 report that they gave in 65, they estimated that they had about 250 members on various committees. They had about 15 committees, one of which that I think is just kind of funny they put together was the Marketing and Public Relations Committee. And they put this sign here. I'll blow it up for you. The sign that was put up on the, the marquee here, the signage, with their slogan that they adopted in the early 60s, Wausau's got it, which lasted through the 60s, I think. At some point, they dropped it. But apparently, in 1964, they paid to have this sign put up on motorways all across Wisconsin, from like Lac du Flambeau and Sheboygan all the way up to like Rhinelander and Antigo. I guess that gets the word out that Wausau's got it. There are other committees too, right? So one of them is also the Industrial Development Committee. There we go. And the next couple slides that I'm talking about all come from a series that are labeled Industrial Development Committee, which I think, again, why are they? Why is it taking this picture of, can you guess? Can you guess where we are? This one's kind of distinctive if you know it, but you might not if you've never been back in the Military Road down in Rothschild. But this is one of the angles of the building Zimpro, which is maybe a company that people don't know as well. You might know the name, but you might not know what they do. They did like wastewater treatment facilities and, stuff that's maybe not a consumer driven demand, but still, very cool, and an important company during its time. So Zimpro, why is this in the series? This was taken in, the stamps on this series were taken in 1964. These are the very first ones in the collection that the Chamber gave to us that I'm drawing from here. There's a big batch that they gave us probably in the 1980s. And then there's one more recently that I'll show a couple of after this series that are more recent from like the 80s and 90s. There's an interesting division there. But back in the 60s, imagine the slide carousel, right? This is a technology that had just really been starting to find. I mean, slides have been around since the 30s and 40s, very popular. But it's the introduction of the Kodak Eastman carousel slide projector that allowed for the quick transfer of slides. At some point, I'm going to do a whole program just on the slide projector and the wheel, the carousel. But for now, I'll just say it changed a lot of things. And when they started to produce them in the early 60s, the first commercial models were like 62, 63, 64. The Chamber jumps right on board. This is a great opportunity to take pictures and to use them as visual aids during presentations for committee members, right? Hey, here's the new thing that's happening at Zimpro. Hey, we're building a new building out in the west side. West side, I think. I threw this one in last minute. I know what this is, though. This is the new foundry for Murray Manufacturing, which was being built at the time. Obviously, being built being the operable word there. Not to be confused with their main plant of Murray Manufacturing, which was at Wausau, the downtown, which, again, people might recognize. It's about a block away from where I'm sitting right now. This is on Fulton Street. But again, there's some changes happening. Very colorful building, a little bit more colorful than it is now, to be sure. Another example here. Can you know where we are? I mean, these are industrial buildings, right? So that's not as obvious. It's not as interesting. But this is actually part of the complex, a new expansion at Wausau Metals, which at the time was back on West Street, just behind, like south of Marathon Park there. Wausau Metals was a growing company. It started in the 50s. In the 60s, they were doing so well that by the end of the 60s, in 68, they'll be purchased by Apogee and then kind of rolled in. And eventually, they'll move out to the Wausau West Industrial Park and now are under the umbrella of the reorganized Wausau Window and Wall. But back in the 60s, hey, this is pretty cool, right? Speaking of colorful buildings, this is a fun one, and one that people probably aren't as familiar with. So this is Engineered Curtain Wall Systems. Engineered Curtain Wall. This is a company that started in the 50s by a bunch of Wausau guys, Stefke's, I think. Or at least it was, the offices were headquartered in Wausau at the Stefke's building. But the actual manufacturing was originally in Antigo. However, two things happened in the late 50s that changed their mind. And they opened this building in the, one of the things is, okay, there are some labor issues with the union in Antigo, and so they want to circumvent that. So they build a new facility and they transfer the production over here, and they say, nope, different shop, different rules. You can't be in a union. You have to go through the whole process again, which is, yeah, it's one of those things. 50s, different times, or maybe not. But the other thing they did is the opening up of the industrial plant in Schofield. This was actually sponsored by the Wausau Area Chamber of Commerce. They put a lot of money into developing space for new companies and expanding companies to move into an industrial zone, zoning for the first time. And so there's where it is. Now, they continued for another couple years, but in the 60s, they were purchased by the family in Michigan, Gordons, who had a little company called Pico, Extruded Aluminum Company. In 1970, they decided that they liked this area better, and so they moved production kind of headquartered here in the Schofield area. And eventually, they're going to be renaming themselves to be Gordon Aluminum, which is still around today. Here's the 1980s and 90s slides, right? It's a different vibe. The purpose of these slides, I think, even just without really much more context, these are designed for a different purpose. These are designed to be public relations, marketing. These are going to go into brochures and things that are going to go out publications in various forts. The composition is clearly somebody who's a professional at this, right? They're taking pictures that compositionally look, more attractive, and there's an intentionality behind them, right? It says, hey, look at Wausau. Look at this area. This is a good place to move your family. Look at all of these fun education and entertainment opportunities we have. We're up to date. Yeah, we got technology. We got a good place to work. And speaking of places to work, the way that they're in the 80s and 90s, the way that they go about showing what it is, the stuff that we do here is very different. This is Fiskars, right? In a plant somewhere, presumably. And they're not just showing like, hey, here's the building. They're showing here is a worker putting the scissors into the packaging so that it can be shipped out. Colby and Colby, hey, let's get some, pictures of them working on the shop, putting a window together. That's what we do. And in some ways, this is a better representation of what's going on in comparison to, say, hey, Jaeger Bakery. Look at that. They're doing pretty well, right? This is an interesting, example. So Jaeger Bakery, not around anymore, of course, but back in 1925, they built a big bread factory here in Wausau, and that was a big deal. And apparently in the late 60s, I think this is 65. 66 is what this slide, and then the following slide here is 66, I think, which is almost the same. They're slightly different. The cars move. The point is, new office. We want to showcase that. Isn't that cool? They built a new office. We're giving an update to the committee, to the internal members, or maybe external people, but we're showing the business. What is a good sign that a business is doing well? Hey, new office, right? And it's not just that. They were also civically minded and remain civically minded, the Wausau Chamber of Commerce, Wausau area. This is backwards. I will fix this before you see it. But anyway, so the bus depot. This is not the city bus depot. This is where you'd catch a Greyhound to get an interurban line if you needed to get to Stevens Point, for example, or places beyond. It used to be headquartered at the Chicago Northwestern Depot on Clark Island. Coincidentally, this is now the building where the current Chamber of Commerce resides, which didn't get planned that. I just was like, oh, that's cool buses. But yeah, it used to be there. Isn't that cool? But hey, again, showing in the 1960s, new bus depot. This is also backwards for me, but you can't tell. I don't know why I keep saying that. I'm going to fix it. That's one of the problems with slides, I guess, is that you can very easily mix them up. And sometimes they don't always put the transparency in the right direction so that it's new depot, right? And this bus depot, is located on the corner of 4th Street and Forest Street. So this is kind of like if you imagine the Wausau Center Mall footprint, the southwest corner, that's what this would be. So, yeah. Again, it's not just, hey, look at the new office at the bakery. It's look at the infrastructure we're building. This is all good. This is stuff that's going to support the businesses and the people who work there in the area, and that's kind of the goal. This is a fun one. This building is now operated, along with the building that's next to it, which is shown here. This is Yankee Bookstore. Except that's not, Yankee Bookstore is one of the oldest businesses in Wausau. They're not always located at their current location, although this is them. They moved across the street from 510 3rd Street, the 500 block of 3rd Street, to the other side of the 500 block on 3rd Street to 525, and they did that in the mid 60s for a couple of reasons: right? Growth and better location. Also, there's going to be some changes to that block on the west side of the 500 block of 3rd Street because we're going to be replacing this old building, the First American National Bank, and the block around it to a whole complex. So I guess BMO Harris now, but the First American Center there on 3rd Street on the 500 block, that is reworked. And a lot of the companies that were there, like Yankees, like Walgreens here, Walgreens is there, Schoolhouse, which is a children's clothing company, they move elsewhere, which is, again, one of the things they're documenting here. Hey, here's an update. They're building the new bank. I can imagine them taking these pictures to be like, all right, we got to document, all right, what's going to happen to buildings that are already there, right? Sometimes the intention for why a photograph is taken and put into a slide presentation isn't as helpful in retrospect. When you're making a carousel of slides, you know why you're putting this in. If you're doing a series, like for example, the ones I just showed of the 500 block of 3rd Street, you can just go down the 500 block and say, this is this building, this is this business. You don't have to keep saying, it's on 3rd Street. It's the 500 block of 3rd Street. You can just say the businesses, because the context of going to the next slide is not going to be as important. This is a thing. Like, again, when I'm going through the stack of slides, sometimes I set some aside because it just said 400 block, which is what this said. But 400 block of what street, you might ask? Because there's a bunch of streets that have 400 blocks that there's businesses in. So the answer is 3rd Street. It's mostly 3rd Street. Now, you might know this, again, some context clues. You might know the building. You might be remembering of the space. You might remember when it was this. I think they just hadn't got the signs up, I'm assuming. So this is, again, unintentional that I included this, not for this reason, but this happens to be the Mayor Lutz building, where the chamber existed. Chamber of Commerce was from the 30s and 40s and 50s. Yeah. Mayor Lutz building. And of course, you have the companies. You have Ladd and Lassie, which was established in the 60s. That was for kids' clothing. And then you had Town and Country, which was for adult clothing. On the same sort of block, this is the Schuett family ran both of them. Fun fact, I guess, the Town and Country was not they started with the kids' shop. In 1960, they opened up Ladd and Lassie. And then in 63, they built on that by opening up Town and Country. And, this mercantile enterprise continues into the 1990s. And here you can get to see a wider shot here from the same series. You can see a bit of Mayor's shoes. They moved from the Mayor Lutz building to the building on the corner. And then, of course, you have the Hotel Wausau, which is a building that is still well familiar. It's now the Landmark Hotel. Okay. Now we get into some ones that are a little harder. I thought this was going to be one of them that was going to stump me. This is one of the first ones that I found that was like, oh, this is fun. This is labeled Marathon Electric Company display. Mid-year membership meeting, September 19th, 1967. So we know what this is showing. This is showing a model of the complex of Marathon Electric, but this doesn't mean it's at the complex of Marathon Electric. So when we ask the question, where are we? It's an inside a building? It's got that 60s wood paneling. That doesn't really narrow it down. So using some context, I was able to kind of figure this out. What mid-year membership meeting? Really, Chamber of Commerce. They had a mid-year membership meeting that was on September 19th, 1967, so the same date. And it was at the Wausau Country Club. So could be there. There's also a possibility, it's unclear to me whether that this slide is representing what was happening at that meeting. They had the display there. Or It could also mean that they were showing this slide at it, like it was taken for that event to illustrate some shit. I don't entirely know. This is one of these that you could maybe do some digging if you were really trying to curious and nail it down. But ultimately, sometimes you don't need that specific of a location. I'm going to show you two more. I think two more. And these are two that I genuinely don't have an answer for you. I do not know where they came from. I don't know where we're taking it. This one is simply labeled, and I'm going to get my notes here just to be sure. Yeah, Halloween windows. Okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell us what business this is, what street it's on, and maybe it's part of a series that would make more sense, but it's dated 1966, February 1966. So this is actually probably from the Halloween season in 1965. I don't know. This would be a good one. If you think you know the answer, let me know, because I'd be curious to see some guesses. But I don't know to this level of specificity what things looked like in the 1960s. Finally, I'm just going to throw this one up here. This is from the very first series that I showed you. All of those businesses, the Red Owl Grocery, the Gallery of Sound, like it's from this. And this is labeled Whisk Life Inc., Wisconsin Life Insurance. So slide is stamped 1969, so 68, 69. You might think then, oh, Wausau Life Insurance is a company, right? Nope, there is no company by that name. Huh. Well, you know what there is? Looking through newspaper accounts, there was a pretty active professional association, the Wisconsin Life Insurance Company, or Association, Wisconsin Life Insurance Association, and they put on events in the Wausau area. It was sort of like a statewide professional group for life insurance salesmen, advocating for life insurance and why you should buy it and get events. And so that's probably what this guy is representing. But again, question. There's no big sign saying this is the headquarters of the association. This is just a dude in front of his house. I don't recognize him. I don't recognize the house. There may not be a way, short of finding somebody who does, to know where this is. And again, maybe that's not the end of the world. You know, we do what we can, and sometimes it's not feasible to know these answers, but I figured I'd show it, and again, maybe somebody will be able to recognize this and give me an answer. But even if not, I just wanted to show this thing. That's all the slides that I have, I think. Yeah. Go back. Thanks for watching. I think there's something really interesting. Again, I wanted to start it out by talking about, here's some slides, here's some cool stuff. Let's just try to guess where we are. I initially tried to toy with this idea because I think part of the fun of doing this sort of thing, because this happens to me and Gary and other folks here occasionally, where a donation will come in or we'll be flipping through something, we'll see a picture and we'll go like, where is this? It's not labeled. Okay. And then we try to use the context clues, and it's often kind of fun to like pick through the directories and, you know, maps and other photographs and figure this out. So originally what I was going to do is I was going to have somebody find a bunch of these, just show them contextless to Gary and I, and then we could like record ourselves like a time lapse of us going through the library and how did we figure this out. Logistically, that turns out to be pretty difficult to do. I didn't feel like editing that much. I've still got a lot of editing to do for this, but I didn't feel like, you know, taking on that task. I also was thinking about it more and more, and I was like, I don't know that it's going to be as interesting. It's a very fun endeavor to do if you're in it, if you're there with the discovery. I don't think watching somebody do it secondhand is going to have that same sort of interest. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we'll give it a shot at some point. But I wanted to at least, you know, kind of pick stuff, and that was going to be my goal. But of course, it turned into sort of a discovery of the amazing resources from the Chamber of Commerce and why they were taking this picture. Again, the Chamber of Commerce is going through it's a really interesting time in the Wausau area, in, you know, in the larger history of the area too. World War II is over. We're back to that prosperity. You got the boom of the 1950s, the cultural changes, the social changes, the technology, the infrastructure. We got new neighborhoods popping up. We got new businesses showing up, the growth of the communities. More people are living here. The Chamber is going to be one of those locations of, hey, let's come together and figure out how to best deal with that, right? How do we advertise? How do we solve the problems that we have? these might have been taken for some of those committees, like the Industrial Development Committee, but there were also committees about like, hey, let's get an airport, let's get some infrastructure. It's going to be a couple years before the 1960s sees the fruition of the Mosinee Airport, right, the Central Wisconsin Airport, but they're cracking on it. They're trying to make it happen. There are programs that the chamber runs that are like fire prevention. Hey, let's try to get, you know, industrial people to do vision and hearing tests for their employees. Like, there's a lot of good that they're trying to do. They're also trying to study some of the problems of the community, like, say, traffic. All those people in those suburbs now need to drive to work. And so where are they parking? Where are they going? You know, it's creating problems. And it's a really interesting time to see sort of a civic organization at work trying to solve these problems. Then this is a nice segue here. Definitely not planned. It's planned. This concludes our look at some places you should know, this month's theme for History Chats. But next month, starting next week, we will see the return of March Madness. So every March, we decide to do some stories that use a map to tell a story. Maps are amazing. And the variety of maps, I think we could keep doing this for a few years if we needed to. We'll see. We have 4 really cool stories coming up for March Madness this year. I'm excited to share them to you. Starting next week with a bunch of maps that were published for this. This is a book, a comprehensive plan sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, among others, to try and figure out how do we deal with some of the growth and the future of our community, including some dense studies of traffic patterns, attempts to try to reduce that traffic by creating a bunch of loops. Have you ever wondered, why does Wausau have so many damn one-way streets? We'll have to tune in next week, and I'll tell you all about that. But for now, I think we've gotten through everything that I wanted to do. I hope you enjoyed the program. Thanks for watching. Yeah, we'll see you next time for some more History Chats.